Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of Commerce Rewired. Really happy to be here today. We got some exciting stats to talk about from the holiday shopping experience. Thanks to our partners over at Cattle. They've been fantastic working with us to get Commerce Rewired off the ground. And let me just go into how Cattle works, because the way Cattle operates is you can get a survey done. It's called a rapid response. With that rapid response, they go out to about 10,000 Canadian customers and survey them on questions that you want to know about your consumer. So we've planted the seed. We wanted to know about holiday. We asked our audience five questions, and Cattle comes back within a period of time with results to those surveys. So what's really nice is it can be targeted, it can be within a specific community, a province, or all of Canada. And then also it is about the nuggets that you want to know about. So you get to set the tone and the questions. And if you feel that you need to do a follow-up rapid response, they can do that for you as well. So thanks to our sponsors, Cattle, for making sure that we have the data and the facts to speak about. And then we'll layer that on with our opinion to the data and what we think it means and where to go in the industry. So again, thanks for joining us. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, which is over here or here or here or here. And let's get to this. So with our first question, we asked our audience, let's start with the big picture. We asked shoppers how they would rate their overall holiday shopping experience this year. And what was interesting from that answer was 11.2%, to be specific, said it was excellent. And about 33% said good, and 30% said average. So you have some positive, but what's really concerning is half the audience, half of the consumers really were not impressed with their shopping experience this year. And we're going to jump right off with David and some of your thoughts on what customers are saying, not saying. It is just a survey, and we give them a few responses to tap into. But between what we hear from the data and what we observed ourselves, let's try to frame this.
Well, I'll put on my tinfoil hat and try and do a good job for you here, Chris. But I'm just glad that somebody collected some data over the holidays, because like most of North America, I got really sick. So yeah, I think there are a lot of people that were out of action, and it was an interesting season because of that, right? Like there was a lot going around, and there's a lot that's kind of complicating things right now in terms of technology advancement and what's happening in the retail sector. If mediocrity was the goal, though, mission achieved, right? So there's a little bit of excellent and a little bit of poor, but a whole lot in the fat part in the middle. And so I don't think much of the retail sector was blowing people's minds or blowing these numbers out of the water. Maybe let's take that as a bit of a win, right? There's a lot of tariff and trade disruption all over the planet. The supply chain's all messed up. And, I think consumers have a lot of stress and tension right now. So the expectation doesn't always have to be to knock it out of the park, but certainly it landed in the middle over this past holiday season.
Yeah, I think what's important to really have a distinction is the average consumer was not impressed with it, right? Like you're talking about 50% of the audience had a home experience with our brand in one of the most engaging family periods of the year, right? You want to have little Tommy super excited, or little Stephanie's really, really happy for Christmas. And if your feeling as the share of wallet in the marketplace was ho hum, who's going to get the market share next year from that experience, right? Like, I think it leaves it open to, if people start planning right now to win next year, because everyone else seemed to have dropped the ball. Like there was nothing outstanding in the marketplace. So Tara, with my opinion is always provocative. Let's bring it into the more realistic realm of, what did you feel? What did you see in the retail space this year? Because I will lean to the pessimistic side, and I love your perspective because it's typically balanced.
You know what? I think there were a lot of brands that were out there doing great things. There was a lot of great experiences, but I do believe that it's been a tough year in retail, and a lot of retailers were executing to execute and to be live and to be out there versus investing and trying to build out an experience. As I went through the data, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't shocked that everybody kind of said, it did the job. I needed to buy gifts. I needed to transact. I needed to put things under the tree. Success. And that's pretty much what the expectation and what retailers got. I think the one element of data, the one piece of data that was a challenge for me was that almost 18% of the customers hadn't shopped yet. And this survey went out in early December. I mean, we've all lived the retail life, right? You know, it used to be 10 weeks, then it became 8 weeks, and then some brainchild thought about, let's jump on the Black Friday bandwagon. So we reduced the time frame to 5 or 6 weeks. The fact that almost 20% of Canadians hadn't shopped in mid-December or early December, that's alarming because for us as retailers, that means we had to be perfect. We had to have inventory. We had to have the right price or promo at the exact moment when that big chunk of Canadians was ready to shop.
I think that 18% is like my hockey team just getting gift cards. Like who? How many people? Like 1 out of 5 people are just waiting. Like what are they waiting for? And I get it. There's always the last minute, but to not, it's hadn't started
Nothing?
the holiday shopping.
But I
Yeah.
really think that's true to the 18% is waiting for what's the clarity, what's the message, what's the price point. They're waiting for what's the best deal going to happen. And they keep waiting because it's so unclear. Like I feel this year's retail was just executional. Check that box. We're in market.
Yeah.
We have a 40% off sign out there. We have gifts under 25, under 35, and we've done what we have to do to be present. So there's
Mhm.
confusion in the market. Like, was Black Friday the best deal? Was Cyber Monday? Oh, wait, we still have Boxing Day coming up. So maybe we give everyone cash because they can shop for the best deal on Boxing Day when everything's getting cleared out. Like, I think we're now in this kind of cycle that customers don't know when the best time to shop is.
We
Oh,
worked
utter
with
confusion.
a couple of retailers. Sorry, Tara, you were going to say something?
Utter confusion. Utter confusion for the customer on where to shop and when to shop.
Yeah, to add to Chris's point on that promo, so we work with a couple of retailers where we push them and maybe like too much operationally because it's not easy, but to bundle things they've never bundled before to make it like, yeah, everyone's doing the same, right? It's 30 off, it's 40 off, like it's the same digits that are up there, and it's like, guys, like you have some inventory that is not selling, call it accessories, like take this, bundle it with something else, and that's your star. And it really did work, and it really just it changed the marketing piece, right? Rather than an up to message, it was like, here's this awesome bundle for this price point. And that is, I don't want to say it's shocking, but it like is surprises the visitor a bit. It's like, oh, I'm not looking at a 40% sign, it's 39.99 now. And I think that's really helped. So it's like just thinking of things a bit differently, and especially using products that may not sell well. Like this is your chance to get rid of them.
Mm,
Everything's got a price point.
Yeah, 18% almost seems like a reasonable number considering how we've trained people over the past decade or so too, right? Like
mhm.
there's almost a propensity to hold off and wait for something better to come along because we have become clearinghouses and the discount mentality is just so pervasive. So I'm not surprised actually to see a number.
Yeah. Yeah. Great points, guys. The second question that we jumped to was we asked shoppers how they actually moved between channels. And what was really interesting was 7.6% of shoppers um, only shopped online, and 8.7% said they preferred store. The largest group, which should not be a surprise to anyone anymore based on how we're evolving, is 50% are now a mix of both. And when you look at how we market to consumers, most of the time it's an online offer or it's an in-store offer. And we're trying to, as organizations, I have lots of conversations with clients. They want customers to be in store and they kind of try to force them into this specific channel. But from our customers and the data they're telling us is let them decide how they want to make that transaction. So
Yeah.
let's start, Johnny. Where do you think this data leads us?
Yeah, it kind of tells me, maybe it's strange to say this as a marketer, the channel debate is over. Like the consumer has decided. They move based on convenience, on timing, on availability. Any retailer is still planning by channel. You're planning against reality basically, right? Like, oh, this is my channel. No, it's not. Like the customer doesn't decide on that. Like it's not in their head to pick a channel. They pick a brand. And years ago when the omni-channel debate was starting, I remember I was at Marks and Canadian Tire, and for me it was about eliminating channels. Like the customer doesn't know, right? And that's always been it for me. Like, and if you think of a restaurant and Uber example, right? If I'm on Uber ordering and I'm going to pick it up, it's not like I count score and be like one digital, one physical, and we're one in one, right? For me, it's just I have I have an app that I use that so happens to be digital. I'm going to go to the store and pick something up. For them, it's just an experience. It's all in one. So I'm happy to see these stats because we always talk about channels and separate all these reports, and the customer shops the way they want. Make it seamless for them as a brand.
But I'll put this out to all of you. Like, doesn't this start at the home office when we start figuring out our P&L and we say, hey, the store is going to do this percent, and because of that, online is going to do 5-10% of those sales, and then we start to have those targets in place. And when those targets throughout each quarter are not being met, we start to have different marketing to drive more online sales because it's down 2%. Meanwhile, store is up 12%, right? Like, shouldn't we be looking at total box sales versus what an email campaign does, mobile does, website? Like, I get that we need to unmeasure them and have a benchmark, but as long as we're driving total success, shouldn't that be the outcome we're looking for?
It's a risk of KPIs that are put into specific buckets, right? And we've seen this throughout history is like once you identify a measurable that has to be a certain number that you're striving towards, and you have the complication of siloed resources, because most businesses still have some element of a digital team that doesn't overlap with other teams, right? It's still kind of in the back room somewhere, despite what Johnny just shared, that it's impossible to kind of measure what is an online sale and what is an offline sale because they're so cohesive and so married to one another. I think you also have to segment this data to some extent by vertical because it's probably very distinct in different verticals, like how much shopping occurs through different channels. Like kind of sticking with a KPI and not an overall success metric is a pretty dangerous thing when it comes to this kind of measurement.
And I think, Chris, you're right. I know you're shocked, but I think you're right in that we should be measuring, one P&L. But I think the smart retailers leverage their channels based on category. And coming from, two retailers where we would carry high cube, I don't want to ship any of the high cube. I want the high cube people to go into the stores, and I think that is when you can start having channel discussion where you leverage the customer data and understand how can I engage with the consumer, but then how can I shift them into the right channel versus, I want this side of the business to do 12%, this side to do the remainder. I think that's where the challenges are that's happening in retail. Because then you're constant conflict and frustration as an organization. And to Johnny's point, there's no consideration for the customer experience. And at this point, customer is king or queen. They make the decision. They will decide your success.
Right. I haven't met a customer yet that says, gee, I hope the digital team gets credit for this sale.
Say that, and like that's how it is in corporate. You're totally right, and that's how the org chart is too.
Yeah.
The org chart is separate that way, right? It's separated that way. So yeah, it's not a surprise that we see this.
Boy, so I think there's opportunity for leadership at retail level to have those discussions especially when they sit down and do the P&L. We're all experts. We know that we want email to have X amount of subscriptions, X amount of opening, click-through rates, and all of those things. We know that we want our website to convert on average to the 1% and have a basket size of X. However, when you're looking at them week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, is your business healthy? Is it up 12%, 13%? Does it matter that the person started their research journey online and instead of making that purchase at store level, they made it online, or they decided to do BOPUS and pick it up at store level? It really doesn't matter. Let that customer decide. Let's make sure that we have the inventory there. The value proposition is there. Collect their email address and their profile information so that way you can create a good lifetime value out of them. Those are the important things that we should be focused on, not whether online was 6% this week or 5% last week. Let's look at the top line metric of the organization and try to do our best to not force customers in channels unless, Tara said, there's a category reason or maybe a moment on why a customer needs to shop in a different experience. I would think from a category perspective, if we had been selling large patio sets or those type of bigger items that are going to cost a fortune to ship from an online perspective, that makes sense to have a kind of clear path to consumer to go to store.
Mhm.
From a third question perspective, and again, thanks to Cattle for doing the legwork on this, there was a lot of noise heading into the season about a spending pullback as customers were uneasy about the political environments and the Canadian unemployment rates and all of these things, interest rates being higher than normal. When I say normal, over the last 15 years versus the history of the interest rates, because they're still relatively low in comparison. For anyone that's new to the last 5, 10, 15 years, they're high. So it's pulling back from people making big purchases. And then you had tariffs and all of these other things that were distractions for consumers in the marketplace. We asked we understood from customers about 29% spent under $250. The biggest group, 32%, spent between $250 and $500, and roughly 18% spent $500 to $749. What was really interesting was 12% spent over $1,000. I thought that was interesting from all of the conversations I've been having with clients and the fear that home offices felt about consumers pulling back, that it was still that high. Now, maybe because I'm speaking to so many different retailers, I was getting a bias that this was going to be a really soft holiday season, but spending $1,000 is a significant amount for any family to spend in today's economy. So was there anything that you guys were surprised about?
Yeah, I think, I feel like I was surprised that some of these levels were higher considering where we are, one in Canada in 2025, December 2025, and November, and then kind of where the world is. But I also wonder, people probably is like, let's just get through the holidays and we'll figure this out in January and February. So I can see the levels when you get your credit card bills being lower spend in January than Feb than usual. Like, we know there's always a bit of a drop off. I feel like this year might hurt more in that Q1. Um, because like, yeah, the thing is, maybe I'm still, I have two young kids, so Christmas is still a huge thing in the household. So if, 1/3 of people spend under 250, I'd probably be able to afford a small boat if I spent under 250 on the holidays. I know for me, I likely spent the same as last year, but I doubled up on experiences. So we couple of trips, we took 2 trips over the holidays. So definitely spent more than I did last year, but said, I'll get the kids their gifts and that stuff, but really want them to remember some stuff on the experience side.
Mm,
Well, I'll tell you, once you
there you
have two
go.
old kids, Johnny, they don't get any cheaper. So that's probably a good mindset to. Thanks. Because I have
But no
two older
boats.
kids.
No
No
boat.
boats. No. This data point hit me the hardest. I immediately identified that my household has some hedonistic behaviors that need to shift. So I'm going to take this opportunity to take this data back and say that we have a little optimization. Christmas 2026 is going to look a little bit different because we need to get like on the program where people are spending. I always thought for a second, it's like, oh, is this with every individual retailer? My wife's very skilled at shopping, and my daughter is too. So I really want to roll it roll it back a little bit. But yeah, it's I think the point that you raised, Johnny, is a really good one. I've talked to lots of people that are like, look, we're just spending less now. 5 or 10 years ago, my entire family had a gift exchange program. We'd get together with one another and you'd buy gifts. We might have somebody's name that you draw on. We'd exchange gifts. We don't do that anymore, right? And I think the gift mentality of the holiday season has really started to change. There's a bit of a social shift here where we do want to invest more in, spending time together, getting out for family experiences, taking a holiday over that time period was, I just saw a lot more instances of that. And so the discretionary spending is maybe taking a little bit of a different route and a different channel. And that's okay too. I think we need to plan for it and understand it and see how, as a retailer, maybe you can intersect with that, but expect a little bit of a different spending behavior. So this data from Cattle I thought was super valuable.
I love data, but I always have questions. I find data causes me to ask more questions. And the one question I have around this is did units change? is this the, have we seen a constraint, or, are people buying less, or are they buying less units because the units are more expensive? And that's what I've heard from a lot of people coming out of the holiday season is everything was more expensive even with some of the deals. So I couldn't buy as much as I did. I think that overall they feel like they bought less, even though the dollar value is probably very similar to last year. And Johnny, David, I couldn't agree more. My family has totally turned into, you buy local or you make it yourself. And that's how we do things. We don't spend money to spend money. It's actually more amusing to see what we all can produce with our own two hands, which is usually embarrassing, but we're trying. I will say you are the parents that I love, Johnny, growing up at Toys R Us as a Toys R Us kid, because parents will always spend money on their children. They will always, no matter how tight it is, they will invest and spend money to make their kids' holidays that Christmas morning an experience that they remember.
Was looking at the data and I was trying to calculate how much I spent on holiday and where I would fit in. And I was like, okay, I think I'm in the norm. And then what I realized is I'm not a holiday shopper. I shop for holiday for months. And I bought my son
Mm.
Luke Combs tickets back in July. I bought him Edmonton Oiler tickets because I knew he was coming to Edmonton to visit. But it was drips every month. So I blew out the $1,000 total easily because I thought about just pure December, what I spent in December. But I was creating experiences over a 6-month period for him. So I wonder how many other people did that as well, that they bought and they put in a closet a gift here or there, and they didn't calculate for those type of holiday purchases as well, or the ones that took advantage of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and bought for gifts for people and never included that into their dollar amount.
Yeah, so we have to recognize Gen Z as a meaningful consumer channel now too. Like my kids who are in their 20s, their spending habits are far different and probably aligns a little bit more with what Tara shared, right? Like my daughter will buy vintage over new anytime because to her that's unique. You know, there's such overproduction and commoditization of everything else that you can buy at a traditional retailer that she's more interested in getting her hands on something that's unique. Hasn't been seen for a little while, right? So I think there's a different mindset into like a measurable consumer group now that's also contributing to reduction in spend.
Yeah, okay, great point. Let's move on to question 4, which this is the area where I think we talked about it earlier, where retailers in the home office, they will set the targets, but it all comes down to execution and planning and making sure that you just don't set a sales target without looking at your flow of inventory and where's it going, what province is overperforming versus maybe another province that's slower, but yet you're still sending them the same inventory that they got last year. Meanwhile, another province that is outperforming this year, you've sent them not enough inventory. This question was basically to the customer about um, what caused the most frustration, and almost 24% said out of stocks caused the most frustration this year for them. Delivery times 16%, and I think delivery times is always going to be on that list where Amazon's trained people that you get it in a day, and
Mm.
most retailers can't deliver the next day. It would just cost too much money. So I think we need to maybe level set with consumers, and 2-3 days should be acceptable, especially when you're not giving it away for a Christmas present. Or maybe that 18% that didn't buy on time probably drew this kind of conclusion as well. But what were your thoughts on the frustration from a consumer's perspective, and like the ability to do self checkout or returns, exchanges, the confusion on websites with lower prices? All of these things added to maybe why that 50% of consumers had a ho hum experience in holiday.
Yeah, I'll maybe make that was surprised to see the out of stock numbers still, but I do think there's because of Amazon and larger big box retailers being so well stocked and buying across size runs and stuff like that. I think it's difficult for a lot of smaller retailers to compete and have that kind of depth of merchandise, right? So I was very surprised to see out of stock is still like so prevalent. That's something I struggled with a ton when I was managing retail stores. I think that number's still very pervasive. There's a fair bit of apathy within the numbers there, right? Where it's like, nothing really bothered me, which is good. That's nice to see. That's almost kind of the answer that you want. I don't know if it needs to be exceptional or terrible. But when it fails quite magnificently, right? It's super magnified and you can swear off like, I'm just not going to shop at that retailer.
But I
Mhm.
think, David, to your point on the stock, I think the stock, though, is probably in stock somewhere. It's just not in stock on that specific store. And I think I'm wearing a Roots sweater right now, which is convenient for this kind of example. Is we're shopping with my wife for a new sweater at Roots. They didn't have her size in stock, and immediately Roots picked up a tablet in store and said, "It doesn't matter. We'll get you your size. We'll get it in another color." And we placed that order, and they gave us the option of coming back to the store and picking it up or having it delivered to our home. That is the experience then that helps eliminate some of this out of stock, because it may not be in stock in your store, but is it in the province? Is it down the road at another location? Is it two provinces away? And can we get it to the consumer to satisfy that order? But I don't think enough of our retailers still with legacy systems are integrated well enough to satisfy the consumer.
I totally agree. I'm still shocked when I hear that inventory systems aren't consolidated in the back end for stores and site. I actually think slightly different. I think the out of stock is the most frustrating for consumers because the impact of the frustration. You being out of stock means I can't get the gift that I want for the person or whichever. The other elements are an inconvenience. You know, delivery delay, Christmas is the same day every year. So luckily I can plan for it. A delivery delay isn't changing the fact that I got the gift that I want. Doing self checkout or lags in checkout doesn't change my outcome of getting the gift that I want. But when you're out of stock on something I intended to purchase, so I think that's where, we could start to assume some of that data is coming from returns, exchanges, all of those things, that's going to blow up on the customer service teams now in January. Nobody's planning for returns and exchanges in December. So I think if we were to ask similar questions, returns and exchanges would be up here. All of the other things would fall below the line. So it's, I think that consumer behavior and the consumer mindset probably shapes out some of the responses as well.
Anything to add to this one?
Yeah, like that one third that just said, nothing caused frustration. I think that's like, you know, for the people in the e-com industry, that's not bad. 35% said I'm the busiest time of the year, and 35% said all okay. Let's take that as a win.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen. So that's my takeaway is like, okay, because like if you have a bad experience or a mediocre experience, you're gonna be more negative to that retailer. So the fact that, one third were positive, it's probably more than that were actually positive, but they just didn't feel like saying it. Like sometimes people are overly negative. So go Canadian e-commerce peeps, go. It's not bad.
This is this is where I always take things to the next level. Why are we focused on loyalty programs? Why are we focused on points programs? We spend fortune on branding, yet we can't deliver the foundation of commerce, which is good in stock, good websites that you can research that are not slow, a nice returns program. If you want to build a brand and you go out to market and you're telling everyone how great you are, and then you spend all of those dollars to get that perception in your head, and then you go through these experiences, didn't you just waste a bunch of money? Wouldn't you rather go back to the basics, back to the foundation for 75% of the customers and get it right versus let's launch a loyalty program and give you 5 points on spending $200 and it's going to take you 4 years to accumulate enough to spend, except for one program. One program actually you earn it really fast, but most of them take forever to do anything with. And this is where I always want to challenge. And my book was around this. Like, why do we keep adding the new shiny wheel or going after something that we think the customers want when foundationally we're not servicing them during holiday? And that's like 75% of customers found something frustrating with it. And doesn't that just hurt your brand?
I think it goes back. I mean, I bet you we all have a perspective on this. I'm going to say it goes back to the silos that exist in the business and the allocation, the operational allocation of budgets. It can often tie into who's the most influential when you're fighting for capital. There's so many pieces, Chris, that tie into this. And there's only a few brands who I think have had leaders who said, no, let's invest in areas that impact the customers most versus chasing the shiny ball. I feel like that, many people feel like, and I'm going to air quote it, loyalty is the way that they're going to win. And I think loyalty is actually just frequency, and people are stuck on that word. But I'll default to the marketer on this one.
I started at a retailer when I first started with a retailer. Okay, one of them. Within my first month, there was all these programs that were up in the air, right? And so they wanted to do loyalty, refer a friend, affiliates. And I went to them and I said, "There's not fabric content on the site." It's an apparel. Can't we can we get this and then move on to the others? But like Tara said, it was like one person's job was to run loyalty, one person's job was to run referral, one person's job was to run affiliate, and we can't get fabric on the site. So they each had to check a box, right? But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's a
fun.
great point. I mean, I have another example of that where I was spending a ton of money on marketing, driving, getting that excitement built up. You could see the amount of net new customers we were gaining through subscriptions, driving to a big event at store level, and then ops had to cut costs. So what do? They reduce labor at store level. So now you've invited a bunch of people to a party and no one's serving the products once they get there. And it's like, here's that silo of marketing doing what it needed to do with drive. Then the operational P&L comes into point. They need to cut. And you're like, how do we bring these things as retailers and make sure we're not wasting dollars over here, whether it's brand or marketing, merchandising, like merchandising goes. What's the lead time, Johnny, on importing items? 6 to 9 months. And then you suffer when you don't market those correctly. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do better and get back to some of the foundations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, overwhelmed my own team here.
I'm not overwhelmed. I'm biting my tongue. I'm going to wait until that podcast we host in 6 months where we're talking about leadership in commerce and, where we see the challenges. We'll talk about that in a few more months.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, question number 5, the last one that we have. Basically, we asked how this year's holiday deals and promotions felt, and especially in like a comparison to what they've previously experienced. 14%, 14.5% said it was truly great savings. 36.8% said there was a few good deals, but mostly noise. 30% said it was hard to tell what was a real deal, and 12% felt promotions were actually misleading to consumers. Let's remember, this is customers who've made a purchase, and we're following up with them on their opinion. This one made me feel sad.
That 15% truly great savings, I'd love to hang around with them because they seem like ultra positive people. So if you're out there,
they're,
me,
they're not me, Johnny.
hey, no, they're not. Those are good people out there. Yeah, a lot of promotion fatigue. We mentioned it, I think before, just like the 40 is the new 30. With inflated pricing, right? So we've all seen that in the last couple of years. Pricing went up, and the promo went up, but technically you're not saving anymore. It's the same. And for me too, it's like when family giving gifts and stuff, 50 is now 75, right? Like everything, when the 25 is 50. So like everything's going up. Tooth Fairy's gone up. So I don't know, there's no real good deals anymore. I'm in that latter half of the group. That's why the 15%, that truly great savings, connect with me because that's good positivity you guys have. I don't see it.
I put my retailer hat on, and of all the pressures that they must be facing, I can believe it. And I think they're comfortable with it and they accepted it, because to stay in business, you have to drive profit. You have to be profitable. And I think that many went out, kind of back to that first question, many went out with the idea of executing. Nobody wanted to provide the best deal because they've faced operational expenses, pressures this year that they probably haven't faced in, 5 years. So I'm not surprised at any of it, but yes, I love it. Johnny, I love that you're seeing it as positive. I'm seeing it as, oh my gosh, the 15% that got truly great savings, that poor retailer probably lost their shirt.
A retailer that is no longer with us and for various reasons, but who I thought did some of this excitement right. And that's Future Shop. What I loved about what Future Shop used to do was it was less about discounting their regular supplied items. For each of their sales, they would work with suppliers and manufacturers and negotiate limited quantities, door crashers, and bring in SKUs that were not part of their core for events, which made it feel like a bigger discount and also allowed you as a retailer to keep your core items at a regular like map price or a regular price. And I think that creativity has kind of gone away from, to Johnny's point earlier, how do you create a value bundle versus blanketing things with a 30-40% discount from a merchandise perspective? And I know there's always risk of having that inventory not move and then you're stuck with some SKUs. But when you're constantly putting the same barbecue on sale or the same TV on sale, customers know it's going to have some kind of a discount attached to it for back to school, for Black Friday, for Cyber Monday, for holiday, for Boxing Week. Nothing feels good anymore. But if you are able to bring in a TV with a sound bar at an exceptional price, or a barbecue with some accessories at an exceptional price, and it's limited quantities, maybe that would change the perception of the consumer because it's something that they haven't seen or it hasn't been repeated so many times throughout the year. And that's what I really loved about when I was on the sales floor of Future Shop was it protected my regular customers coming in and going, hey, you just sold me that TV last week for
Mm.
$1,000 and now it's on sale for $800. And then now I got to worry about giving them a $200 rebate on an item. They didn't operate that way. For the most part, it was about net new bundles and SKUs and an assortment coming in. So I know that's not part of this question, but what are your thoughts on being that creative from a retail perspective?
I think you have to be.
Overwhelmed you again.
I think you have to be. I think that retailers need to be creative to differentiate themselves in a space that is nothing but noise, nothing but noise. But it needs to add true value, right? It needs to be something of real value to the consumer. I mean, how many times have you sat in rooms where people have kind of, here's us, here's our competition, X, Y, you compare them all. As soon as you mix it up, you become differentiated. And I think that as retailers, we need to be more creative in what we do and how we think about the customer experience doesn't have to be just based on dollars and cents and
Right.
percentages off.
Yeah, and I think as we
Agreed.
close this out to not overwhelm the viewer here at 41 minutes, thanks for sticking with it. But I think there's two tracks. Okay. There's one on the brand side where someone's going to that brand to buy something. Okay. And Chris and Tara, you're right. Like that, you have to be creative. You have to keep that in mind and so on. There's also the second track where I'm looking for something independent of a brand, but I'm looking for a product, right? And for me this year, we watched, so the kids are old enough now, Home Alone, we could start watching it. So we watched Home Alone 1 and 2, and then didn't even know there was 3 and 4, but we watched those. But if you remember in Home Alone 2, the turtle doves, those turtle doves in Home Alone 2,
Hmm.
that man,
Yeah.
Duncan's toy chest they gave. So that was the best present, I think, this year that I got. I got each of the family. So I bought 4 of them, one for each of us, put them in the stockings. And it wasn't about a brand. It wasn't about the experience. It was, I needed a product. I searched on it. I found some awesome options and I bought it. And to me, there's always those two tracks, what the brand does, but then there's also this other track where it's like spontaneous, right? Like just be ready when something inspires somebody to go buy something and be ready for them.
That's a great point. And it's about, I think the consumers too can take accountability in how you go and think about specific sales times of the year and how to make it different than just going out and buying a discounted item and what experience you really want your family to have and to make it feel more meaningful versus just another TV on the wall.
Hmm.
Appreciate you guys all being here. As Johnny said, it's about a 40-minute podcast, but I think there was a lot of great stats in here to discuss and to to give some perspective. What we want from this audience is obviously subscribe and and comment below. We want to hear from you. We don't want these surveys to be stuff that we're thinking about. Ask us the questions, allow us to work with our partners, and we'll come back and do podcasts that are specific to what our audience wants to hear. So thanks everyone for joining us. Appreciate it. And we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
All right.